It is in the Hall of Fame of the most infamous videos on the internet, not only because of its controversial content, but also because of its origin. It was released online as a joke among friends. It was simply meant to disgust people and ended up shocking a multitude of internet users. What? Whether innocently or out of pure curiosity, they came across these images that they could never erase from their minds. When the joke crossed all boundaries and became famous, a whole community was founded around that minute and a half of video. A whole trend that is still booming today, the famous video reaction craze. Millions recorded themselves gagging while watching this video, which has now become a milestone and marked a before and after. The ultimate scatological video. Take a deep breath and turn on your cameras as you learn the real story behind the 2 girls 1 cup video. It was 2007 and we were definitely much more innocent, although of course we've been obsessed with sex since the dawn of humanity. Now, thanks to virtuality, we could consume it in a non-stop 24/7 frenzy. Armies of sleepless, bleary-eyed teenagers wandered the halls of high schools, making it clear what was going on. One of these teens was the one who started it all. One who, during a typical early morning hunt for material, an early morning spent browsing pages of classified content. Investigating methodically, he had come across something that would leave him speechless. He was a supreme connoisseur of XXX. For him, not everything was the same. He sought to separate the wheat from the chaff. That early morning, he came across something that would clog the pipes of his brain, which was used to a constant flow of information flooding his mind with repugnant sensations. He didn't want to give his self-satisfaction to one of those videos that offered him nothing new. He had become picky just a few years ago. He had spent hours and hours in front of fashion magazines staring at the photos of the models, making the action unfold in his imagination, creating sophisticated scenarios, coming up with sequences that satisfied his most intricate fantasies. With the arrival of the internet and the democratization of porn, he, like everyone else, had surrendered to the sedentary lifestyle that would soon take over everything. At a certain point, getting risque material became so easy that imagination was left behind. This had taken away some of the excitement from the whole thing. But this young man believed that the lust to masturbate does it best, so he knew there was still a victory to achieve. Finding the best porn possible, night after night, sacrificing himself for the cause. And finding the best porn had gradually become finding the weirdest porn. The young man knew that his latest string of links was taking him out of his comfort zone. He realized moving forward required crossing a threshold. He could close the pages now and forget about it, but he didn't. He decided to keep going. He wanted to behave. He could act like a true professional. So he got ready, clicked again and again. He came across a page that didn't remind him at all of the ones he usually looked at. He hit play, without stopping to analyze it, without asking himself too many questions. By the time he watched the first video, he had already loosened his belt. He was willing to accept anything. He was there because he considered himself brave. However, what he found on that page not only killed his inspiration, but also gave him spasms, and not exactly of pleasure. That was his chance to leave, erase his traces, and try to forget everything. He could have returned to the classic hot macho women, which was worn out but still effective, but he didn't. The young man knew he couldn't avoid dreaming about what he'd seen. Then he had an idea, partly because he didn't want to be the only one who had gone through the rough experience. He ended up changing everything when he uploaded the video to the after hours section of the off-topic forums. The rest happened at the speed of light, or rather, at the speed of viral. A user based in Chicago who wanted to ruin his friend's day, he bought a domain that is now part of internet history. He uploaded the video he saw on the forum. This happened on August 12th. This guy was as surprised as the first one, but instead of just being shocked, he decided that the video was perfect for pulling off a big prank. It was the era of Rotten.com, a shock site active from 1996 to 2012. Under the slogan, "An archive of disturbing illustrations," it focused on morbid curiosities, images of violence, deformities, autopsies, or forensic photos. In this context, a link labeled 2 girls, 1 cup didn't seem dangerous. The young man from Chicago was wary of the title. If it had been explicit, it wouldn't have been as successful as it was. If the name of the site or the title of the video had warned what would be seen in it, many would have chosen to skip it. However, this guy decided to entice his friends with what they were about to see. A sensual video in which 2 women interacted with each other. He would even clarify as his manager, "These 2 girls do things you can't even imagine. And he would wink, or rather, he would use the winking emoji. Back then, it was just a semicolon and parenthesis. The victim would click the link, eager to discover what the unimaginable thing was, assuming that the result would be some erotic scene with wild orgasmic screams as the soundtrack. But no, of course not, it was something else. The young man shared it with his close friends, laughed at the insults he received, and literally forgot that the domain existed. Until he got a message from the hosting company requesting more money. Traffic increased beyond his contracted bandwidth. In December 2007, the site, which had already been monetized with ads, reached its peak, reaching 8 million visits. That's how Sugar's 1 cup spread, like a trap. The general rule was that whoever shared the video didn't mention its real nature. The person who shared it did so with complicity, pretending they were giving a chance, not an impending nightmare. Just as it happened to the person who started the viral video. There were many men and women who came to the video with their belts unbuckled or even with their pants around their ankles. Then, if they regretted it, they couldn't stop watching, while at the same time they were filled with disgust and repulsion. There, while you were with your guard down, vulnerable, you accessed that unprecedented spectacle within the mass consumption of forbidden material. And the reaction to such a thing ended up generating the popularization of a new type of content, which by then was already starting to make a place for itself. For example, consider the case of Scary Maze game. It was a little prank created by someone named Jeremy Winterroth. A game tested the user's steadiness, which they had to control. A little square whose goal was to move through a series of mazes without touching the walls. In the 3rd level, when the corridors of the path became noticeably narrower, and forced the player to concentrate much more, squinting and sweating in front of the monitor. At the climax of Zen concentration, the terrifying face of Linda Blair in her sublime role as the possessed girl suddenly appeared accompanied by a scream. The game was the pinnacle of tricksters who enjoyed startling anyone who fell into their clutches. In May 2006, a callous YouTube user nicknamed "Can We All Just Get Along?" He came up with the idea to film a kid while he was playing Scary Maze game, forever capturing how the child was traumatized for life. The prank farewell went viral on the internet, which sparked a strong desire in a group of users to follow the example. More than 500,000 people used their loved ones and not so loved ones, and they put them in front of the cameras to ambush them and thus increase the number of views on their channels. Once Sugar's 1 cup's initial prank had passed, and its content was already public knowledge, watching others react to the disgusting content was the trick many found to indirectly come across the video without risking ending up vomiting on their keyboard. What really made Sugar's 1 cup famous wasn't the video itself, but the videos that were made about it. It was the pioneer within a very specific genre of videos that would end up defining websites like YouTube in the following years. With Sugar's 1 cup, reaction videos would escalate to incredible levels. In the 1.5-minute video, 2 exotic Brazilian mulatto women, Carla and Latifa, appear performing various unconventional fetish acts. In the first few seconds, they only suck on each other's mammary glands. Everything had gone as expected and promised. Shortly after, You see one of them relieving herself into a crystal glass, and that's when madness breaks out. The Brazilians grab the glass and lustfully taste its contents. Next, they kiss each other with their mouths full of feces. As if that weren't enough, then they stick their fingers down their throats and vomit on each other, clearly enjoying it with delight in their eyes. All of this is accompanied by the romantic tune of Lover's Theme, a piece by composer Herbert Royd, who also created the soundtrack for the erotic and innocent Emmanuel. This is the well-known story. What few people came to know when they tried to wash their hands of the matter forever is that what you see in Two Girls One Cup is just a trailer for a movie called Hungry Bitches, which could also be subtitled as Starving Sluts. Ironically, many say Two Girls. One Cup is the last video to watch if you're eating or hungry. The reasons are obvious. This fully Brazilian movie was filmed in southeast Sao Paulo by Marco Fiorito, a local director and fetish film producer. Fiorito started producing in 1994. He and his wife started out producing homemade foot fetish films. Don't be alarmed, this is just a foot fetish. So, in the best style of Quentin Tarantino or the infamous Dan Schneider, many of these films were starred by themselves feeling potential in what they were doing and wanting to move up to the big leagues. They put the pedal to the metal and placed ads in local newspapers to sell video home system tapes, just like the porn industry did at that time. Fiorito made enough money to live by producing his own fetish films. And over time, the business became so popular that he was even able to hire more actresses to perform in his projects. He didn't hire scriptwriters. But we already know that all these movies aren't known for the depth of their scripts, but for the depth of... Well, anyway, in 1999, when the internet porn industry started to grow, a businessman named Luis Vilas Boas approached Fiorito and offered to work together to sell his company's movies online. In addition to Dragon Films, Fiorito also registered the names MF Videos and LM Videos to release more titles. His movies started to attract more attention and money became a constant in the man's life. He always described himself to the press as a compulsive fetishist who ended up spending a large part of his earnings to satisfy his own sexual needs. An idealist. Through Vilas Boas, Fiorito met Danilo Croce, who began giving them financial advice. The director told him that he didn't like Croce and that he was never a formal part of Dragon Films or MF Videos. Despite their complex relationship, Croce still helped Dragon Films grow. Croce sold the studio's movies in Florida, expanding the empire. Everything seemed to be going well until September 2006 when Croce was arrested, accused of obscenity. What had happened? Since the 19th century, the United States has waged wars against materials deemed obscene, citing morality. Thanks to the strong pressure exerted by Anthony Comstock, a United States postal inspector and a purist of Victorian morality, the Comstock Act was passed in 1873, which made it illegal to send obscene material, contraceptive methods, sex toys, erotic material, and information about abortion through the mail. The law has been widely criticized because it has often been seen as conflicting with the First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech, religion, and the press. As if that weren't bad enough, the Comstock Act also didn't include a specific definition of obscene, which caused a lot of headaches in court. In Brazil, unless movies involve minors, bestiality, or homicides, they're generally free to sell. In the United States, however, you could be arrested and prosecuted. Basically, that's what happened to Danilo Croce. However, Croce wasn't arrested for Two Girls One Cup but for a movie called Toilet Man 6, which has nothing to do with superheroes and should be kept far away from children. In this film, the main character, who you could say has the courage of all the Avengers combined, is used as a toilet by several women. In November, Fiorito issued a statement that helped both him and Croce avoid further legal trouble. The producer described his business and said he was not involved in marketing Dragon Films in the United States. He also said that he could never have imagined that his work would end up causing problems abroad. They released Kroos after paying about $100,000 and he returned to Brazil in custody. The case against Dragon Films attracted a lot of attention and probably helped spread hungry bitches all over the world. Millions of viewers would end up watching Sugar's One Cup, turning this short pornographic trailer into the cultural sensation of the moment. The user Farty News was the first to upload to YouTube his friend's reaction to that grotesque spectacle. In September 2007, the YouTuber Juggling Lake showed the clip to her grandmother and recorded the poor woman almost having a heart attack in front of the cascade of excrement. Kevin Snyder suggested having a group of Marines watch the horrific scene to observe their reactions. The stars weren't spared the torture either. A reporter from Squire magazine showed it to George Clooney, making the actor leave the room. Porn actor Ron Jeremy could only tolerate a few seconds before things got really ugly. On Comedy Central, host Daniel Tosh came up with the idea to create the largest reaction video ever to Sugar's One Cup, and he played it for his show's audience. Tosho. Ace Frehley, the guitarist of Kiss, mentioned matter-of-factly that he had seen worse things on his band's tours. Shows and series mentioned how disgusting its content was. Some users created reaction videos featuring fictional characters. In the series Family Guy, for example, Brian put the unbreakable Stewie in front of the computer to make him suffer for a while. As often happens with anything strange or twisted, all of this had its precedent on Japanese television, which is world famous for representing a wild ecosystem with highly questionable ethics and morality, where suffering is often considered the best form of entertainment. In those chaotic lands, in the early 80s a show called Lo Tengo El Mundo premiered, a game show where different Japanese celebrities faced various questions about exotic places. It happened that while filming the show, the producers quickly discovered that the famous guests reacted in striking ways to what was happening on the set, even when the cameras weren't even focusing on them. They were greatly surprised when they decided to leave their microphones on and saw the positive response from the audience, who were delighted to know what the others were saying or feeling. The producers decided to take the idea further and established the waipu model, a small window embedded in a corner of the screen, which constantly showed the celebrity's face, so everyone could see their reactions during the show. The screen within the screen was born, which today is the tool used by so many YouTube users and others on different platforms to make videos. Reactions. Two Girls, One Cup. It became so well known that Coca-Cola launched an ill-advised Facebook campaign for Dr. Pepper, referencing the trailer. They pulled the ad after many complaints from parents of minors. The electronics store chain MediaMarkt also made an explicit nod to Two Girls, One Cup in an ad for a cupcake maker, where two smiling girls took a couple of cupcakes out of the device, under the phrase Two Girls, One Cupcake Maker. What kids are these? Marketing kids maybe? Only this time, the more sensitive customers were offended again. In 2010, the Canadian comedian John LaJoie composed and sang Two Girls, One Cup song, a romantic folk-style song that talks about vomiting half-digested excrement in the other person's mouth, as just another act among the endless possibilities of expressing love. As was demonstrated in popular culture, that degenerate sequence became a true legend. Lover's Theme is the title of the song that plays during the video, a piece composed by the musician Herbert Roy for the 1971 film Delusions of Grandeur. However, those who watched Girls One Cupcake with the sound on will always think of that song, like an anthem of that moment when innocence was lost forever. In January 2013, news began to circulate that the producer of the original video would spend 4 years in prison because of the video. But this story isn't true. Another producer, Ira Isaacs, who was a fan of coprophilia videos, went to trial. He called himself a shock artist, not a pornographer. Although he had nothing to do with the viral video, he cited it in his defense, which is now known as the defense. Two Girls, One Cup. He said he didn't realize so many people were interested in that until he saw the viral phenomenon. Isaac who was also involved in matters of esophilia, was sentenced to 4 years in prison, but was released on parole after 26 months. As the months went by, the advertisers of 2 Girls 1 Cup removed their ads after learning about the video's content. Those who owned the domain decided at that moment to sell it for a hefty sum to an unknown company. The new owners refurbished the site and started asking for credit card numbers to unlock the material. Little by little, and without anyone being able to stop it, the legendary.com turned into just another run-of-the-mill porn site, 2 Girls 1 Cup. It also sparked another heated debate that remains unresolved. Were the scenes shown on screen real? Was it really feces that these girls were eating and sharing so affectionately? Coprophagia is uncommon in humans. It is usually the result of the paraphilia known as coprophilia. The consumption of human feces carries the risk of diseases such as hepatitis A and B, pneumonia, amoebiasis, gastroenteritis, or cholera. Consuming one's own feces increases the risk, as well as the introduction of bacteria and eggs from worms or other intestinal parasites. Similar risks can apply to certain sexual practices, such as anilingus or putting objects in the mouth that have been in the rectum. For a while, there were rumors on several websites that Latifa, one of the main figures of this revolutionary product, had died of dysentery. But it was fake news spread by a satirical forum. The impact of Sugar's 1 Cup triggered a survival reaction. All could see the horror by sacrificing a few. By observing it indirectly, a mirage worthy of a fraternity was created. It was a fresh, momentary response, a gesture that would expose us to a world eager to reveal, with growing ease, its strangest, most unusual, cruel, and violent aspects. Nowadays, reaction videos report to the internet about the internet itself. Nowadays, people live more through what others feel. Not to create brotherhood like before, not to help us see what we don't want to see, but simply to reduce, to simplify. With all its filth and everything, the case, Sugar's 1 Cup may have been the last romantic breath of an entire generation. I've exposed the way they're trying to sell today, a natural reaction that's actually aimed at selling a product. The over-dramatization exposes a group of YouTubers, not only mercenaries, but also not very skilled at acting. As the internet invades us more and more, we have less time to experience the world outside the algorithm. Now, everything happens in front of the screen. The question is, when did we start to consume everything the internet spits out without a second thought, while we scroll from our toilets? At what point in the joke did we become the protagonists of our own Sugar's 1 Cup? That's it for today's video. Hope you didn't get too grossed out. You know I sometimes post intense videos, right? Because I know the people who watch me have a strong stomach and ask me for these kinds of morbid and disgusting things. Like the one about Gigi Alin, which I'm sure you'll remember. If you don't remember it, I'll leave it recommended around here. I hope you found it interesting. If you liked it, please leave a like, turn on notifications, and subscribe. If you haven't done it yet, I'll leave a couple of recommended videos around here. I'm sure you'll like them. Goodbye for now. See you next video. My name is Magnus Mephisto, and this was The Real Story. Goodbye.